Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 episode number 84 based on novel. So let's start. Everyone was observing the ball-shaped glowing entity, and Wang Donga even walked forward to knock on it curiously. Hu Yuhao laughed. Don't knock, don't knock. It might become angry. Wang Donga chuckled and replied, it's an iron blotch. How can it get angry? As she was speaking, a series of clanging noises sounded. Metal barrels started to flip out from the soul tool and pointed towards Wang Donga. Undulations of soul power could be felt clearly from every barrel. Wang Donga was shocked, and jumped backward subconsciously. The instantaneous feeling of being locked on even caused her to unleash her martial soul. The formerly shiny, spotless soul tool seemed to have instantly turned into a porcupine. There were close to 100 metal barrels on it, of all different sizes and colors. Evidently, they were used for different purposes. The most eye-catching of them all was an extremely large soul cannon. This soul cannon had a diameter of around 20 centimeters. The base of the barrel was semicircular, like a small hat attached to the top of the soul vehicle. The barrel could rotate on its own, and brought the greatest pressure to Wang Donga. This soul tool wasn't created by Hu Yuhao. He wasn't so good. This had been a gift from Shen Ziwen before he left. These barrels were installed by Shen Ziwen. The one at the highest point was a stationary soul cannon. It wasn't very large, and even tapped into the size of the all-terrain exploration vehicle to resist the recoil as it was fired. In terms of structure, it could be considered a Class 6 stationary soul cannon. However, it could fire Class 8 and below stationary soul cannon shells as it was stabilized by its base. Of course, those cannon shells had to be available first. After obtaining this soul tool, Hu Yuhao made some modifications to it, mainly in terms of its movement. He simplified a few things and added some elements to it, making it more flexible. Shen Ziwen had told Hu Yuhao that such brand-new stationary soul cannons were the latest research product of the illustrious Virtue Hall. Their offensive strength could even compare to the soul fort strategies used by Class 6 soul engineers. These new soul forts were even mobile, and were notable because soul engineers could greatly increase their survivability inside them. In the end, it was very difficult to research true robots. Thus, the illustrious Virtue Hall became less demanding, and tried their best to complete this all-terrain exploration soul tool. They even gave it a new name, All-Terrain Self-Driving Fort. When Shen Ziwen passed it to Hu Yuhao, the all-terrain self-driving fort had already been pushed to its production phase. After production, the use of certain rare materials would decline. The overall quality would drop to the level of a Class 5 soul tool. However, the fighting strength of the Sun Moon Empire's soul engineers would still be enhanced if they were equipped with these forts. Fortunately, Shen Ziwen had told Hu Yuhao about it. Even after the quality of the materials used dropped, these forts were still very expensive. They couldn't be mass-produced as of yet. Everyone from Shrek was stunned when they saw the porcupine. It really resembled a porcupine, Hu Yuhao told them. This all-terrain exploration soul tool has become an all-terrain self-driving fort after it was modified. In the near future, the Sun Moon Empire's soul engineers will be equipped with vehicles like this. Cai Maya laughed bitterly. Yuhao, are you trying to tell me something? Hu Yuhao was impressed. Dean Cai is indeed smart. She can tell that I'm trying to hint at something. Dean Cai, I wish to propose to the Sea Gods Pavilion that all the Academy students learn how to use soul tools after we return. They don't have to learn how to create soul tools, but they must at least know how to use them. If possible, we can start with the inner courtyard. I hope that you can help me with this. Cai Maya laughed helplessly. I knew that you didn't show this soul tool off for no reason. Let's talk when we return. I'll need to discuss it with Xiaozhe. However, I think you'll need to convince Elder Shen first, okay? Hu Yuhao also knew that he couldn't be impatient. He should wait until they returned first. However, he couldn't help but add, Dean Cai, we've actually been holding to a misconception. What? Cai Maya was stunned. After pondering for a while, Hu Yuhao said, all this while, our academy and the 3 empires on the continent have been progressing very slowly in terms of soul tool development. It's greatly related to the reluctance of soul masters to accept the rise of soul tools. However, soul masters are the ones who can truly unleash the full power of soul tools. Soul engineers aren't called that because they can produce soul tools. I believe that anyone who can use soul tools can be considered a soul engineer. A soul engineer will be better than a soul master if they both use the same soul tool for the first time. That's because he's more familiar with soul tools in general. However, I'm absolutely certain that soul masters will have a greater advantage given enough practice and familiarization. This also means that I believe that every soul master can become an outstanding soul engineer, whereas soul engineers might not necessarily be able to unlock the full potential of soul tools on their own. In fact, I've always reckoned that our ultimate soldier plan is a test of this theory. I've already come up with a conclusion. So, Cai Maya was completely moved at this point. She couldn't help but interrupt Hu Yuhao. Are you saying that soul masters will be much stronger if we fight using soul tools? Hu Yuhao answered, yes, that's what I mean. I'm very sure of that. I believe that the future trend will be soul masters equipped with custom-made soul tools along with their own martial souls. Our academy is the best academy on the continent. Why don't we kickstart this trend? Soul tools aren't monsters. They are only weapons that we use. They are like Choa's golden dragon spear. Cai Maya nodded and looked pensive. Yuhao, I have to admit that you've moved me. After we return, we must discuss this in detail. This concerns the future development path of the academy. I seem to have a rough idea of what you mean. Hu Yuhao said respectfully, Dean Cai, thanks for supporting me. He was a person who knew his limits. At this point, Cai Maya was already receptive to his suggestion. If he nagged any further, she might become annoyed. At this point, a deafening roar sounded from afar. The sound waves were so strong that everyone subconsciously covered their ears and retreated a few steps. A sky-shaking roar? Cai Maya was stunned. She finally realized what one of the two soul beasts that were fighting was. It should be the sky-shaking roar. It has also unleashed its strongest innate ability. Let's go. Cai Maya addressed the others, then quickly dashed forward. Zhong Lashuan quickly took up her previous position and covered everyone's back. Hu Yuhao controlled his soul tool forwards. The rest followed beside him, moving quickly towards the two soul beasts. Even if it was the Great Star-Do Forest, a few kilometers wasn't too far for them. The sky-shaking roar had shocked all of them earlier. They were still several kilometers away. The roar was so deafening that their ears were still ringing. As they got closer, they were practically being attacked by the sound waves. It had to be the sky-shaking roar. The clash between the two soul beasts continued. They were fighting more and more intensely. Finally, Hu Yuhao was able to detect them. The soul power undulations from these two soul beasts were very strong, such that Hu Yuhao couldn't cover their entire bodies with his spiritual detection. He could only observe from nearby. The forms of the two soul beasts also surfaced in everyone's minds. One of them resembled a lion. Since he was seeing it through his spiritual detection, the color of the lion's hair couldn't be distinguished. In terms of appearance, it looked like a small lion. It was only a meter long, its shoulder height below 60 centimeters. However, it was fast, and emitted the deep, furious roars they had heard. That's right, this soul beast was the sky-shaking roar, the origin of that deafening roar. While it was small, its voice was unbelievably loud, and could easily qualify as a deadly weapon. All the flora within a 300-meter radius of the area where the two soul beasts were fighting had disappeared. More accurately speaking, it had been shredded into powder by the deafening roar. The strongest innate ability of the sky-shaking roar was the same as its name. Even a 100,000-year soul beast would find it difficult to deal with this soul skill. The frightening sound waves couldn't be resisted just by covering one's ears. The sound waves were both domain-type attacks and a domain-type control skill. Even if one could handle the destructive power of these sound waves, their hearing would still be greatly affected. The ringing that ensued could introduce severe vertigo. It was an extremely strong ability that combined both control and offense, and it was precisely because of this ability that the sky-shaking roar was considered a second-grade soul beast. The sky-shaking roar's opponent wasn't ordinary, either. The sky-shaking roar wasn't huge, but its opponent was even smaller. It resembled a dog, but its limbs were extremely thick, and its shape was a little weird. There wasn't any hair on its body, and it was covered with scales. Hu Yuhao could sense soul power undulations coming from its scales using his spiritual detection, but didn't know the purpose of it. While it was small, it looked very fierce. Its face was long and ugly, while its fangs poked out past its lips. What soul beast is this? A huge question mark appeared in Hu Yuhao's mind. He had never seen such a soul beast before. Cai Maya was stunned as she said, "Eh? Is this a silver brave beast?" After hearing the words silver brave beast, Hu Yuhao was lost. Even Zhong Lashuan was doubtful. Evidently, she didn't know anything about this soul beast either. Wang Choa looked at Cai Maya and nodded. She said, "It is a silver brave beast." Cai Maya was stunned, and lost her voice as she asked, "Isn't the silver brave beast extinct? Why is it still present in the Great Star-Do Forest? If it's the silver brave beast, it can't easily be killed by the sky-shaking roar. The situation is bound to change again. Let's not get close to it. Yuhao, continue to monitor them." After she whispered her instructions, she led the rest of them to hide behind a huge tree. Zhong Lashuan asked, "What kind of soul beast is the silver brave beast? The academy doesn't seem to have taught us about it in the curriculum." Cai Maya nodded and answered, "Yes, it isn't taught. While the academy does teach you about ancient existences and extinct soul beasts, it will only choose those that are representative. We usually won't talk about the other extinct soul beasts. After all, they don't have any real meaning. The silver brave beast is also rarely found in ancient collections. It has been extinct for a long time. It is similar to the dark golden terraclaw bear, in that it has poor reproductive capabilities. Hua Yuhao was still in the all-terrain self-driving fort, but he could hear Cai Maya clearly. An extinct soul beast. The sky-shaking roar was evidently not the choice Wang Chua had in mind for him. This meant that she had found the Silver Brave Beast for him. Cai Maya continued. Strictly speaking, the Silver Brave Beast is only considered a third-grade soul beast. However, it possesses an extremely strong innate soul skill which bumps them up to second grade. Chua, you've seen it before? Wang Chua nodded and answered, yes. I even suffered under its hands. If not for my fortune, I would have. That's why it left a deep impression in my mind. The Silver Brave Beast is an agile twin elemental soul beast. While its twin elements aren't particularly strong, its innate soul skill is extremely powerful. If one is careless, they will suffer greatly under its hands. Cai Maya nodded and said, seems like Hua Yuhao's luck is great today. These two soul beasts are great choices. Yongyu, while you are an agility-type soul master, the sky-shaking roar's all-around control and fighting talents will be very beneficial for your future development if you fuse with it. What do you think? Li Yongyu was already getting excited. When he discovered the sky-shaking roar, he was already moved. That was because he could roughly guess that its soul skill wasn't suitable for Hua Yuhao. The sky-shaking roar only appeared in the core region. Without Dean Cai accompanying them, it wouldn't have been easy for him to encounter it. Although his martial soul wasn't fully compatible with it, the sky-shaking roar's abilities could compensate for this shortfall. He nodded without any hesitation as he agreed wholeheartedly. Han Ruoruo asked, Dean Cai, what's the Silver Brave Beast's soul skill? Tell us. Cai Maya replied, I definitely meant to tell all of you, or I wouldn't have stopped you. The Silver Brave Beast's innate soul skill is called Inscription, an extremely strong ability. It's able to inscribe its opponent's soul skill and store it in its mind. When it needs it, it can use it. The most terrifying thing is that this Silver Brave Beast's inscription is completely done through its divine energy, and thus it won't be affected by anything. When it unleashes its inscription, it'll only be restricted by its own cultivation. The power of its soul skill is able to be unleashed completely. Let me give an example. If the Silver Brave Beast were fight against us, it would be able to inscribe Ruoruo's Golden Sky Surge and use it against her. If its cultivation were the same as Ruoruo's, the strength of its Golden Sky Surge wouldn't be any different from Ruoruo's Golden Sky Surge. If its cultivation were above hers, then the strength of its Golden Sky Surge would actually be better. Against the Silver Brave Beast, it's common to see your own soul skills used against you, and you'll be caught off guard. That's why I hope none of you use your 4th or above soul skills when you fight later, to prevent its inscription from succeeding. After hearing Cai Maya's explanation, Hua Yuhao felt his heart rate increasing. This inscription was too powerful. This also meant that he could obtain this powerful soul skill if he managed to obtain the Silver Brave Beast's soul ring. He could do the same thing as it then. As he thought until this point, he quickly asked, Dean Cai, what is its inscription limited by? Cai Maya looked at the huge metallic ball and nodded in her heart. Hua Yuhao didn't lose his composure because he was excited, but thought of a question instead. There are indeed restrictions. It can only be used to inscribe one soul skill at a time. This also means that the Silver Brave Beast has to unleash the soul skill that it inscribed before it can inscribe another soul skill. According to historical records, there are also a limited number of times that it can use its inscription. However, no one knows how many times that is. The only certainty is that it won't be below 3. That's enough, Hua Yuhao exclaimed in his heart. Of course its inscription had limitations. If the opponent wasn't strong enough, the ability that was inscribed wouldn't be outstanding anyway. It would be useless in a fight then. However, humans were different from Soul Beast. The Silver Brave Beast had to fight other Soul Beasts before it could complete an inscription. However, Soul Masters could communicate with their partners and inscribe their soul skills. The situation was different. Hua Yuhao grew more excited as he thought of this. If he used it well, it could bring about surprising effects on his opponents. Cai Maya added, the Silver Brave Beast's inscription isn't effective on everything. Unless its cultivation reaches 100,000 years, it won't be able to inscribe the soul skills of a 100,000-year Soul Beast. Of course, this problem won't exist once you become a titled Doluor, if you manage to obtain this soul skill. You should really thank Choa. This is a huge gift. No one knows whether a second Silver Brave Beast will appear on the continent ever again. Wang Choa said, there should be more than one in the Great Star Do Forest, but they are very rare. They all live in the core region. I've seen them twice nearby. There should be more than one. Cai Maya revealed a smile on her face and said, that's great. Honestly speaking, I don't wish to see soul beasts go extinct even though there's conflict between us and them. If the proposition on spirits that Hua Yuhao mentioned can be realized in the future, as she spoke until this point, she paused for a moment and looked at Wang Choa. She said, regarding spirits, you'll know when you return to the academy. They will be tested on the inner courtyard students first. Wang Chua revealed a stunned look on her face and said, the academy has found something to replace soul rings? Cai Maya shook her head and said, it's not the time to talk about that now. Although it isn't a complete substitution, it can possibly mediate our relationship with soul beasts if it succeeds. It's about time. Let's get ready to fight. On the other side, the intensity of the fight between the two soul beasts had reached its peak. Even though they were around 2 kilometers away, they could still sense waves of soul power undulations coming from afar. Wang Chua was slightly astonished at this point. Replacing soul rings? What kind of ability is that? It sounds like it's related to Yu Hao. However, the main mission for everyone now was to take care of these two soul beasts. No one would bother answering her questions. Cai Maya whispered, I'll move forward later. Lushuan, bring Li Yongyu along with you and make a roundabout through the left. Ruoruo, proceed from the right to cut off their escape route. Yu Hao, can Mo Xian enter your soul tool? Yu, Donga, and Shoa will be responsible for the left side, no problem. Hua Yu Hao opened the vehicle, and Mo Xian got in. Mo Xian was filled with curiosity when he entered the self-driving fort. Hua Yu Hao turned to smile at him and said, Brother Mo, I can teach you how to control it in the future if you are interested. The most attractive part about changing from a soul master to a soul engineer is that it can make someone like you, who isn't very offensively inclined, much stronger. I'm interested. I'm very interested. Mo Xian replied without any hesitation. There was a burning look in his eyes. When Hua Yu Hao spoke to Cai Maya earlier, she wasn't the only one who was moved. Mo Xian was the one who was the most agitated. As an auxiliary-type soul master, he was protected on the battlefield by the rest of his teammates. When he saw the countless barrels that appeared on the self-driving fort earlier, he was completely roused. If there was something like this to protect him, he would no longer be a burden to the rest of his teammates on the battlefield. While Mo Xian wasn't a soul engineer, he was still clear about some of the principles of soul tools. He clearly knew that soul tools could be controlled using soul power. However, he joined the Martial Soul Department first, and was also highly valued by that department. Even though he was interested in soul tools, he never dared to show his interest. But Hua Yu Hao's words struck a chord with him. With such an opportunity, he accepted Hua Yu Hao's offer without any hesitation. Hua Yu Hao was slightly moved when he saw the burning look in Mo Xian's eyes and said, I'll teach you when we return. You can be the pilot for my plan. Even though he was talking to Mo Xian, Hua Yu Hao wasn't slow in his actions. He poured in soul power with his left hand and controlled the soul tool with his right hand. The self-driving fort started to move flexibly, its legs unobstructed on most surfaces. Wang Chua and Wang Donga followed behind him, quickly getting into position. Defeating the two soul beasts wasn't a problem. They only had to be wary of the two soul beasts escaping. Very soon, the encirclement was completed with the help of Hua Yu Hao's spiritual detection. The sky-shaking roar had gained the upper hand near the end of the battle as it roared. While it wasn't very large, its strength was as terrifying as its voice. Its claws left deep marks no matter where it landed. Boom! The silver brave beast flew into the air as it was struck by the sky-shaking roar. It broke 2 trees before falling to the ground. As the sky-shaking roar howled, its eyes filled with ferocity, and its body turned into a streak of flowing light. It opened its mouth wide and revealed its terrifying fangs before leaping towards the silver brave beast, going straight for the throat. If it managed to strike the silver brave beast's throat, the beast was likely to die. At this point, the silver brave beast flipped around and leapt up. However, its body was a little unstable, and there was blood flowing from its nose. Evidently, it was gravely injured. However, it still maintained a calm expression, and even revealed a brutal look on its face. A strange light shone from its body as the sky-shaking roar arrived before it. A dim, illusory projection flashed behind its back. If Hua Yu Hao were closer, he would have discovered that the projection that flashed behind the silver brave beast's back actually had the same appearance as it did, cut off all hearing. Hua Yu Hao immediately warned everyone using his spiritual detection. Following this, a furious roar reverberated out. It was different this time. Hua Yu Hao was already within a kilometer of the two soul beasts. When the furious roar sounded, an unprecedented sound wave was unleashed, creating an extremely immense force. Hua Yu Hao had his self-driving fort squat down before activating a Class 6 protective soul barrier. He also immediately unleashed his Ice Empress armor and blocked for the two cubs, as well as Mo Xian. The sound traveled rapidly. Even though Hua Yu Hao had predicted what was going to happen, the sound wave arrived just as he completed all his actions. The sound wave wreaked havoc for close to 5 seconds before it ended. Everyone covered their ears and tried to find cover. Only the 3 who had at least 8 soul rings used their own strength to resist the sound wave. Hua Yu Hao and the others in the fort were still fine. The fort took most of the impact, and Hua Yu Hao only sensed his soul power dropping significantly. However, he, Mo Xian, and the two cubs weren't harmed at all, since the fort protected them. Wang Donga and Wang Chua took cover behind the fort. Although they were affected by the sound wave, they weren't directly exposed to it. Their cultivations weren't weak, either, and they only turned a bit pale. The sky-shaking roar was indeed an extremely strong control type and destructive soul skill. However, this sky-shaking roar was released by the Silver Brave Beast. Undoubtedly, the 10,000-year sky-shaking roar was unfamiliar with the 10,000-year Silver Brave Beast. It had even thought that it had gained the upper hand, and hadn't expected its own ability to be used against it. Caught off guard, it was struck by the sound wave. The sky-shaking roar was extremely domineering when it unleashed its roar at its opponents. However, it suffered greatly as it was struck by its own soul skill. The terrifying sound wave sent its body flying into the air. More importantly, its body was paralyzed as it was hit by the sound wave. It couldn't even control its body right now, much less retaliate. The Silver Brave Beast had endured for the entire fight for this opportunity. It instantly changed into a streak of silver light before making a half-turn in the air. The tail that it had been concealing shot out from behind its body like a sharp, pointed hammer. It stabbed into the sky-shaking roar's wide-open mouth and penetrated through its head attack. Hua Yuhao gave the order. Through his spiritual detection, everyone could be instructed at the same time. The sky-shaking roar had already suffered a lethal blow. If the Silver Brave Beast attacked any further, they wouldn't be able to obtain its soul ring. There wasn't any time left. Everyone from Shrek Academy attacked at this point. The all-terrain self-driving fort stood up quickly and burst forward. The 6 soul cannons with the largest calibers started to exude intense red lights. These 6 cannons were extremely destructive, high-explosive soul cannons. Their effective range was more than 500 meters. In the next moment, the 6 cannons were fired at the same time. 6 huge cannon shells formed by soul power cut through the air and went straight for the Silver Brave Beast under the guidance of Hua Yuhao's spiritual detection. While he couldn't use soul skills that came from the 4th ring and above, he could use soul tools. No matter how powerful the Silver Brave Beast's inscription was, it couldn't possibly inscribe the abilities of his soul tools. The rest of the group was faster than Hua Yuhao, but his 6 high-explosive cannon shells were the first to hit. The Silver Brave Beast had stabbed through the sky-shaking roar's head. As it moved its long tail, it first destroyed the sky-shaking roar's vocal cords. Without its sky-shaking roar, its abilities fell greatly. It couldn't retaliate even if it wanted to. The Silver Brave Beast was also extremely cunning. It broke its opponent's vocal cords, scared that its opponent would retaliate. After breaking its vocal cords, it immediately retracted its long tail. Indeed, the 10,000-year sky-shaking roar recovered immediately. It closed its mouth and tried to roar again. However, a pool of fresh blood shot out from the area behind its back where it was stabbed before it collapsed to the ground. The Silver Brave Beast wanted to attack again and take it down. However, it was then engulfed by a sense of crisis. It screamed before turning around and running away. 6 high-explosive cannon shells were about to hit it. Hua Yuhao had made precise calculations as he fired the 6 cannon shells. These cannon shells weren't used to harm the Silver Brave Beast, but rather to restrict it. The 6 shells encircled the Silver Brave Beast as they landed on the ground. They also separated the sky-shaking roar and the Silver Brave Beast. 6 loud booms went off in succession. Terrifying soul power shockwaves swept the entire place. The sky-shaking roar was blown away by the explosions. It flew towards Li Yongyu and Zhong Lashuan. Hua Yuhao had calculated even this precisely. Whether it was Zhong Lashuan, Han Ruoruo, or Cai Maya, they were impressed by his judgment and control. The Silver Brave Beast was already fatigued. As it faced the explosions, it could only passively endure them. However, it was indeed very sly. Seeing that it couldn't escape, it started to dig into the ground and covered its body with soil. Even though the explosive strength of the cannon shells was very great, they didn't fully impact the Silver Brave Beast. To everyone from Shrek Academy, this restriction was sufficient. The encirclement had been completed. Li Yongyu used his moonblade to end the sky-shaking roar's life. A black soul ring rose from its body, and Li Yongyu grew extremely excited. He lifted his right hand above his head and gave a thumbs up to Hua Yuhao. On the other side, Han Ruoruo was the first to attack after the explosions. Her dazzling golden rope was not to be trifled with. Golden rings descended from the sky and completely cut off any escape route. It was impossible for the Silver Brave Beast to escape anymore. It was simple from this point onwards. The fatigued and hurt Silver Brave Beast was no longer anyone's match. Although it tried to use its inscription, it was useless, as no one used their powerful soul skills. Within 5 minutes, Hua Yuhao leapt out from the fort and killed it while it was under the control of the dazzling golden rope using his unparalleled chill, Empress sword, before the Silver Brave Beast could complete its inscription. They were prepared, but the Silver Brave Beast wasn't. It was also injured after fighting the sky-shaking roar. There weren't any loopholes, everyone from Shrek Academy coordinated very well. It wasn't Han Ruoruo or Hua Yuhao who were most effective against the Silver Brave Beast. After all, Han Ruoruo's control-type soul skill could still be replicated, so Hua Yuhao had been attacking using soul cannons from the fort. Wang Chua was the reason why the Silver Brave Beast was taken down so quickly. To Wang Chua, soul skills weren't that important. Her golden dragon spear couldn't be inscribed. She used pure strength and fighting techniques to attack the Silver Brave Beast, and successfully took it down thanks. After killing the Silver Brave Beast, Hua Yuhao gave a thumbs up to Wang Chua. Wang Chua replied, "This is only an exchange. I'm only fulfilling my promise. There's nothing to thank me for." Hua Yuhao smiled and said, "I have to thank you no matter what." After he finished speaking, she nodded, and Hua Yuhao sat down cross-legged on the ground, starting the process of guiding the Silver Brave Beast's black soul ring into his body. This was the core region of the Great Star Do Forest. The faster he absorbed the soul ring, the better. Neither he nor Li Yongyu delayed, and they both started their absorption. Although they might absorb soul skills that they didn't want, that was unlikely to happen. The Silver Brave Beast and Sky-Shaking Roar weren't soul beasts that were balanced in all aspects. They each possessed a single strong innate ability. For soul masters, they were most likely to absorb the strongest ability of a soul beast before they absorbed any other soul skills. Li Yongyu and the Sky-Shaking Roar weren't completely compatible, and thus it was unlikely for him to absorb weaker soul skills due to higher compatibility. As for Hua Yuhao, the inscription was the most suitable for him. Moreover, Hua Yuhao's spiritual power was great. This meant that he had some form of control during the absorption process, and didn't have to rely on luck. He could guide the greatest force to fuse with his body, and it wouldn't be too huge of a problem for him, either. Protection. Everyone gathered to protect the two who were absorbing their soul rings. Mo Xian and the two cubs didn't leave the Soul Tool Fort, it was the safest place for them. During the absorption process, the difference in physical strength was slowly revealed. In terms of cultivation, Li Yongyu was 10 ranks higher than Hua Yuhao, and absorbing his 6th soul ring. However, there was an insurmountable gap between their physical strengths. The two soul beasts had both possessed around 30,000-year cultivations. Hua Yuhao only took 2 hours to absorb his soul ring, but Li Yongyu took close to 6 hours before he succeeded. Fortunately, the core region had its benefits. They didn't know if they were in the territory of the Silver Brave Beast or the Sky-Shaking Roar, but even after the two soul beasts died, no other soul beasts came into the area. Although they took quite a while to absorb the soul rings, they didn't run into any trouble. Hua Yuhao's spirit eyes finally obtained their 5th soul ring. From this moment onwards, he could be truly called a soul king. After the absorption was over, Cai Maya quickly issued orders to everyone before the two of them could even test out their new soul skills. Retreat. Even though she was a titled Doluor, she was still on tenterhooks, as they were in the core region of the forest. Right now, the sky was turning dark. Cai Maya didn't dare to spend the night in the core region. No matter what, it was better for them to retreat to the hybrid region first. They were very fortunate this time, compared to the misfortune that befell them earlier. Not only did they successfully find suitable soul beasts to kill, but they also didn't meet with too much trouble as they retreated. They ran until midnight, only stopping after they were deep in the hybrid region. They met a few soul beasts along the way, but they didn't pose any threat to them. They rested for the night and carried on the next morning, moving as quickly as possible away from the core region. They took less than 2 days to leave the Great Star Do Forest. "We're finally out," Li Yongyu exclaimed. After rushing out of the forest and seeing the vast expanse of grass, everyone from Shrek Academy felt as if they had returned to the real world. Yes, they were finally out after their ordeals of the past few days. Everyone that needed soul rings had also successfully obtained their soul rings. Everyone was relieved as their bodies released the tension they had been holding. Even Cai Maya had the same feeling. Although luck had been on their side, their journey hadn't been completely smooth. It was a miracle that the entire team was able to successfully retreat after facing off against the Zhong brothers. Cai Maya smiled and said, "Alright, don't get too relaxed, either. It's not too late to celebrate when we return to the academy. Let's rush back to the academy before it gets dark. The earlier we return, the earlier we can relax." Yes, everyone acknowledged her words, their voices filled with delight. Hua Yuhao sighed in his heart. His cultivation had increased significantly over these past few years. Whether it was his abilities as a soul master or a soul engineer, he had made significant improvements. However, he had realized how he was lacking in many aspects during this journey through the Great Star Do Forest. Luckily, they hadn't met an extremely strong soul beast in the core region. If they had run into a 100,000-year soul beast, it would have been a crisis that the entire team would have had to face together. In the near future, their requirements for soul rings would become stricter as their cultivation grew. However, he wouldn't have the help of a strong team every time. His abilities were still lacking. After a brief moment of disappointment, Huo Yuhao started to become excited. Although he had faced numerous threats on this journey, he had benefited greatly too. Like he had anticipated, his fifth soul skill was the Silver Brave Beast's inscription. Not only this, but he even brought back 2 dark golden terraclaw bear cubs. These 2 cubs were still very clingy. In addition, they had grown much bigger after just a few days. Their hair was pitch black, and they no longer had any trouble walking. They were indeed first-grade, top-ranked soul beast. They would soon possess fighting strength. They even treated Huo Yuhao as their father. When others got close to them, they would bare their teeth. Not only could he get close to them, but they were also greatly reliant on him. Besides the 2 cubs, Huo Yuhao had also obtained 3 soul bones. These soul bones came from the owners of the 3-way martial soul fusion skill, the 3 wolf apes. He already knew what he wanted to do with these 3 soul bones. He was going to keep one for himself and give the other to Wang Chua. The last one would be donated to the academy. If Donga wanted one, he would give her his soul bone. If she didn't want the soul bone, he would keep it for his own use. After all, an additional soul bone could increase the abilities of soul masters. Huo Yuhao was especially excited to see the wolf ape's instant teleportation in the soul bone. No matter when this skill appeared, it was regarded as a divine skill. It was like possessing another life. Everyone moved extremely quickly as they rushed back to the academy. Before the sun set, they finally saw the familiar city and gate to the academy. "We're finally back," Li Yongyu shouted as if he were venting. Following this, he started to chuckle. He was very satisfied with what he had gained on this journey. As an agility-type soul master, the sky-shaking roar was an explosive soul skill. Furthermore, the soul skill had some degree of controllability. It would definitely affect his future development. Comparatively speaking, Wang Chua and Mo Xian's soul rings were lousier. Mo Xian's soul ring was slightly better than Chua's. After all, he used his skills at long range, and they covered a huge area. As for Wang Chua, her bloodlust seemed slightly weaker. The only impressive thing was probably the Bloody Baboon King's 50,000-year cultivation. After all, she had obtained a 50,000-year soul ring. Everyone rushed into Shrek Academy, except for Wang Chua and Cai Maya. Wang Chua was a little confused as she watched the rest of them. She seemed to be thinking about something. Cai Maya came up beside her. She smiled and asked, "Chua, what's wrong? Do you think they are too attached to the school? I believe it'll happen to you one day. The academy is like everyone's home. From now on, this will be your home. Isn't it a celebratory occasion, now that we've returned from somewhere dangerous?" "Yes." Wang Chua nodded her head slightly and followed Cai Maya into the academy. Everyone was still eager as they arrived at the shore of Sea God's Lake. After that, they exhibited their respective moves and rushed in the direction of Sea God's Island. Huo Yuhao held on to Wang Donga's hand. Before he lifted off towards Sea God's Island, he twisted his head to glance at Wang Chua. He also gave her a thumbs up. After that, he flew off with Wang Donga. Wang Donga's radiant butterfly goddess wings spread wide. Huo Yuhao lifted his arms and was carried along. His toes brushed past the water's surface and formed patches of ice. As they looked into each other's eyes, they could see their own reflections. Comfortable and at ease at returning home, they proceeded towards Sea God's Island. Wang Chua only lifted off after they were far away from her. She also proceeded towards Sea God's Island. Cai Maya smiled as she saw how eager they were. However, for her, this mission wasn't over yet. She still had to report everything what had happened to the academy. This was especially true since they had gained many surprising rewards during this journey. There were many things she couldn't delay in reporting. After landing on Sea God's Island, Huo Yuhao and Wang Donga rushed to the Sea God's Pavilion. They were still living there, and the academy didn't plan to change that. They were also quite happy to continue staying there. After all, the Sea God's Pavilion was constructed using the golden tree's trunk. The vital energy of heaven and earth was quite nourishing in the Sea God's Pavilion, and extremely beneficial to their cultivation. This video will end here. Thank you for watching.